I guess the first question is, when did you first come to the Glenelg Surf Lifesaving Club?
Well, I first joined in around October, November 1969. I followed my older brother Leigh, who'd been there a couple of years by then. So I was 13 at the time. Juniors was just about to start. So it was in that era, in the Don Thomas era, if you like, where Don Thomas and Ray Tredenick were very dominant figures, and they were going through a building phase that lasted probably until the mid-70s after that. So it was quite a transitional period for the club. They were building from what they had been and developing into a much larger organisation and getting a lot of members along the way.
I won't let you worry about your age, but that was the year I was born, 1969. So there you go.
Yeah, I figured that'd be about it.
Well, you and your brother look pretty good for your ages. I know Leigh puts all of us to shame. He coaches my two younger ones in running, and he's fitter than most of us. So he's still going strong at his age.
Yeah, he's going pretty good, but he's still got 6 years on me. So he's going very well.
Yeah, no, good on you. So what's your favourite memory of the club?
I think the best memory has to be the winning of the first state titles, the first state titles we'd ever won. 1999, just the whole weekend. It was, everyone had put in so much effort. We'd been competitive for a long time without having won it. And it was just good to, and we dominated the weekend. It's like one of those grand finals, you see that the result from three-quarter time. It gives everyone enough chance to really enjoy it. And that and the night back at the club was just absolutely fantastic.
We had a taste of that recently with the juniors states. Grange have dominated over the years. And they'd won the last 7. I think Glenelg took it out about 7 years ago, and then since then Grange had dominated, and then we won last year, and the partying went well into the night, first the young ones and then the older ones. So I know the feeling. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it was, and it was just a good result. Everyone had worked so hard. When I was voted in as president, at that AGM, there was a number of people made quite a push for the fact that, we'd been successful in a lot of other components of lifesaving, but we'd never won a state titles. We'd never shown a prolonged competitive effort, if you like. We had a couple of spikes and did okay, and then we went back to sort of middle of the road. So it was a great reward to people who'd put in a lot of work at the club, and it certainly wasn't me, but there was a heap of people that did it, and people that are still around at this time. So it was absolutely a great weekend and a great night.
I've got to ask, were there any nudie runs that night, or was that only New Year's Eve?
Well, I was president, so I have to leave before any nudie runs start. But nudie runs in those days were very common on New Year's Eve.
Yes.
I believe I've been gone now for 20 years, so I believe since that time they've been outlawed. But every New Year's Eve, all the girls would be left upstairs and the guys would be going downstairs for their nudie run. So that was just commonplace. That was the way it was in those days.
It's certainly frowned upon these days, that's for sure.
Well, I believe so, but in those days you could run down the beach on New Year's Eve and there wasn't anyone there. Well, these days they have fireworks and everything. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's another one of those things. Life goes on. The club's not the same as it was when I was, when I was growing up. It was a boys-only club until I think I was club captain at the time. Must have been mid-70s or 80s. I'm not quite sure when females came along, but until that time, it was just a boys-only club or a men's-only club. So it has changed a lot.
So at that time, the change when the girls entered the club, did it change the culture a lot of the club, or did it sort of go gradually over time?
No, it was a rude awakening for a lot of us. I think everyone thought that the girls could come in, and I think at that stage they were allowed to use the nipper rooms, which of course didn't have hot showers or anything, and that caused a certain amount of angst. But no, it was pretty tough. Those early days were tough. The club was nowhere near prepared. There wasn't proper facilities for the girls. There wasn't even proper facilities for the boys, because the boys are just used to, or the guys are just used to using the whole club. And all of a sudden, you know, their showers are down one end and their change rooms are down the other. And so you had all of those facilities, but, you know, and I think it was a rude awakening for the girls, because the guys just wanted to, you know, go ahead. They thought it was just going to go ahead the way it had always been, but it just didn't happen that way. But the advantages that it's brought, I mean, the club would never have survived as a man's only club. It just, these days it wouldn't be allowed, and it just had to grow and had to move to the next stage. But and everyone can see, I mean, there's plenty of females these days, probably as many females or more females getting voted on as life members and all those sorts of things. And and very high up in the hierarchy of the club. So but I mean, we are talking 30 or 40 years ago now, so it has come along as a gradual transition.
Was the club positioned, I know the club's changed a few times over its history, but back then in sort of the late 60s, early 70s, was it where the Platinum Hotel is now, where the Pier Hotel is, or was that?
Yeah, it was pretty much, I think it was more back where that set of units is. When you're on the balcony and you look north and that set of units, it sort of started there and went along, and that was, the club was there for a long time, where all the extensions that happened in Don and Ray's time, they were all extensions of the club. So there was a gym. It started off basically as a gym with some lockers, and then it grew and grew and grew, and then it became, you know, got the stage that they built upstairs, and then they got that was the first time they had a proper licensed bar and all of those things. So, but that's basically where the position was, virtually central in that beach. I mean, I go down there now, and obviously I don't see it very often. I haven't seen it that often in the last 20 or so years, but, you know, where there was a car park down at the end of Anzac Highway. Well, there's now a marina and a number of sets of apartments, and one of the set of apartments on the ocean side was practically built on the beach. So they sort of, the beach isn't what it used to be. We had an Australian titles on our beach in, I think, early 70s, I think 1972, 1973. And whilst the Australians wasn't as big as it is now, you know, you couldn't have run that Australian titles on that beach. And, you know, that was quite something for, you know, until that time, none of the Australian titles in South Australia be run in the metro area. And so that was quite something, but obviously couldn't be done now.
I remember that growing up, we had the car park at the end of the Anzac Highway, had all the sandmans and all the surfers down there, and then you had all the carnival all the way to Magic Mountain. And I still remember that wall was there, even as I was growing up. It's the only thing I remember of that beach, and obviously the jetty, but certainly a lot of change over the years.
Yeah, well, you had the three where Collie Reserve is there. You had all of the sideshows, Sideshow Alley. Burger King was right down at the end of the car park. So, I mean, it just had, the whole place has obviously changed, and time goes on. It was looking pretty tired, and it probably needed to change. And in the end, the club had to move. In the early, when I became president, that was just about the start of the whole redevelopment. So I think I spent the whole 8 years being on one committee or the other, trying to hold our ground and get as best as we could out of it. And at one stage, they wanted us to go to down where the yacht club is, because the yacht club used to be where that that marina is now. So the yacht, and then they said, well, you can go down to the yacht club and you can just come back and do patrols every weekend. We said, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, right.
So we had 8 years of toing and froing going with that. And I mean, Shane Dorr came on it, and Mick Billing was the president straight after me, and Shane Dorr was after that. And eventually they got a spot and did pretty well out of it, I think. So that went on for a long time. That whole negotiation process probably went on between when I started and when Shane finished. It was probably the best part of 12 years or so, I would say.
Wow. It's a great spot. We love it. It's after nippers 2 to 4 o'clock, we usually get out in the balcony as the sun's setting and have some beers and an early dinner, and the kids are running around the lawn, and it's central. It's always packed, not just with members, but the general public now. You can hardly get a seat these days. It's a very popular precinct.
Well, that's what it's all about. I mean, it's fortunate, well, it's good that the club has got such a great facility, but when towards the end there, the facility that Don and his crew built was getting pretty run down because we couldn't invest in it, we couldn't do anything. But my kids were like yours, they were fully involved. You know, they had great time. They've still got great friends. In fact, Matt's still involved with Treg over here as a coach. So, you know, it's that family environment, and that's one of the other things that you wanted to discuss is that family environment, that community, that fact that you can go down there and your kids can be there and they feel comfortable that you're there. Some of the friends that you'll get now through your involvement with juniors and whatever, you'll never lose those.
Yeah.
There's people we know, we go back to Adelaide, and that's where we met. We met them when our kids were in juniors together, and they're just great friends, and they're like-minded spirits, you know. They want to be there, they want to be involved with their kids, and, you know, it creates an attachment.
Yeah, it's a fantastic place. We love it. So what does the club mean to you then?
Well, I think it is that sense of community, and the fact is that not everyone has to be the fastest runner, the best swimmer. You know, they don't have to be good at skis or boats or whatever, but there's something within that selection. You know, they can head towards lifesaving if they want to do that. They can, you know, I was never a great competitor myself, and I finished up probably more in administration than anything else. But there's always that sense of achievement, and because you're in that one club, there's a community in there, and there's just, you know, it's just that sense of community and sense of involvement. It's just a great place. It's a great place for your kids to grow up. You know, in my case, I had 2 boys. You know, as soon as they got to, as soon as Matt in particular got to competing age, he was treated as a man, and he just loved it. So it's that sort of thing that has always attracted me to lifesaving.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you there. The life skills, you know, the life-saving skills, the social skills, and boys and girls sort of side by side. It's a very inclusive club, very much a family club. You know, we're serious about competition, but we're also, you know, serious about having fun and enjoying the community. So, you know, that hasn't changed in the years. Yeah,
and I think one of the things in South Australia that they don't do over here is, and it's probably a numbers-based thing, and maybe it's changed in South Australia, but, you know, they used to have, in age groups, they used to have boys and girls competing in the same races. I mean, my son Matt and Hannah Davis used to compete in board rescue. Hannah was the better swimmer of the 2 at that stage. She may still be, I'm not sure, but so it's just that environment, you know. The kids were, and the kids accepted that that's the way it was. Boys, girls, there was no different. Everyone was equal, and everyone was in it together to have a good time.
Is the scene similar in WA? Apart from that, generally speaking, surf lifesaving as big in WA as it is over here?
It's bigger over here. The numbers are far more substantial. The Treg Club that we've been involved with since we came over have about 1,200 members, and 400 of those are juniors. So and it has probably, the junior numbers aren't what they once were. When we first came here to get in juniors, there was actually a wait list. So,
oh wow,
Trig there's 2 or 3 of the Australian titles standard competitors actually went to Trig to join juniors and couldn't get in, so they went to another club, and obviously became medalists at the Australian titles. So it was there were people sleeping out in their cars, because if you got there early enough, it was just crazy. If you got there early enough, then you would get a ticket, which would mean you get in. If you were too late, you'd be put on a waiting list, and if you were way late, don't even worry about it.
Wow.
But it was very competitive, very difficult to get in for a while. And I know there's Sorrento, which is the next club north from us. So I think they do something like 600 or 700 juniors. So, but they have a flatter beach. Trig is probably the biggest surf beach on the metro area. Mm-hmm. So particularly the younger age groups, they start in Sorrento, and then they'll often come down to Trig when they're old enough anyway. But
wow. So
it is, and competition-wise, it's the next level up. It's still nowhere near Queensland, but there's certainly some, some good competitors over here.
The last question for today, what would you like to see for the Glenelg Surf Lifesaving Club in the future?
Well, I'd like to see them continue with their community type work, that's lifesaving community work. I would like to see them progress in competition. And I know for some people, competitions are, a bit of a no-no, because everyone thinks it should be more about participation. But at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with, in my opinion, nothing wrong with competition. And I'd like to see a club that's got as much going for it as Glenelg to get back to where they were, And you mentioned Grange earlier. Well, we knocked Grange off 3 times in a row to get 3 state titles, and Grange dropped back to second, and then they're back up. And they're I'm sure they're very competitive even now. I haven't followed it the last few years, but they're competitive, and they've always been competitive in juniors too. So, it's more about sort of getting some programs together and getting some good coaches and making sure that's run. I mean, we were lucky back in my time that we had some good people put some programs together. Trevor Holmstrom, for 8 years or so, was the amount of work he put in was just phenomenal. He was the competition manager as we had it in those days, and he just kept it all ticking over. As with everything, not everyone's always happy, but he churned through all of that, and it was a pity that Trevor and his family decided to move to Queensland, but life goes on, and we still won a couple after he left. So I would like to see competition come back up and be around the mark at least, and be competitive. And I think if Grange can do it, and my old nemesis Seacliff can do it, then I'm sure Glenelg can get back to what it was.
Well, we certainly made a start in the juniors last year. We intend to fully defend that title in the next few weeks. So we'll see how we go, at least in the junior side of it.
Well, that's a fantastic start. And you know what? If it's more about having the resources in place for those kids to go in and think we're on the right track if we stay at Glenelg, because I think last time it happened, half of them scurried away and went somewhere else. So that's where the senior club needs to get moving. And I think it sounds like the junior club's got some good structures and good people in place, and just needs to be pushed on for the senior club. So I would certainly like to see them improve in that area.
It certainly seems to be happening in that direction now. We get some really good support from the senior committee in terms of funding. We generate a lot of funding ourselves through sponsorship and other revenue, but it certainly seems to be very much cooperation there, which is fantastic for both. That we help the seniors and they help us, which is great. Sort of one club approach.
Well, it is one club, so that's the best way for it to go. But it's good that the senior club needs it's not only Glenelg, it's all of the clubs around Australia. The greatest recruiting pool is out of juniors. You know, their percentage, surf lifesaving retains a higher percentage of juniors than little athletics and swimming and a lot of those other sports. And it's just a matter of maintaining that and keeping them at Glenelg and getting them to the next stage and getting those programs working.
Certainly the retention of juniors going into young guns and seniors is a big focus at the moment, because we find we tend to lose a lot when juniors finish. So there's a lot of work being done in that retention area. So we're sort of well underway. We've sort of come to the end of time. I don't want to keep you any longer, but is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to add before we finish?
No, I don't think so. I think the only thing I would like to say, and there's too many people to thank for my time as president, but, you know, there's a vast number of people all put in my time, have all put in a lot of work. And, you know, I'm really grateful for that, because we did a lot of good things in those 8 years, and we had a lot of good times, and I still reflect back on those years. And I know, I think my son Matt, we've had some discussions about it. He competed in his first Taplin in the States at 15, and it was the year we left. So, but he still cherishes those days. So it has been a fantastic journey with Glenelg, that's for sure.
Well, 90 years is quite a period, and you know, we're all, you know, very happy to be part of that, and you know, carrying the torch of you guys that you started all those years ago, and very thankful for that. So thank you for your time today, and thank you for being part of the 90th anniversary. We'll be slicing all of these videos together, and we'll send you the finished version when they're all done. But it's a shame we couldn't have you in person in Adelaide, but it's understandable, obviously, COVID and travel restrictions, but it's great to be able to have you here today. So Shane, thank you very much for your time.
No worries, Dan. Thanks for that. We'll try and catch up for a beer next time I get back.
Sounds good.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks again, Shane. See ya.
Bye.